am Pedro Mora, and we have arrived to the year 2010, and computer technology and communications have transformed our world. However, politically, we have not yet recognized the power of direct democracy. From the 2009 World Peace Forum, we present this time a panel of 2 politicians and 2 labor leaders, answering the questions of Ingo Schmidt, the moderator.
How does it feel to be back in the Maritime Labour Center, this time not as an organizer for the movement, but as an elected MLA?
Great. So Ingo, to respond to your question, the reason I'm here as an elected official, MLA, member of the Legislative Assembly for Vancouver, Kensington, representative in our provincial government. And as an MLA, I feel that I was reflecting on why I'm here, why I wanted to come here. I feel very strongly I'm committed to peace and social justice, and all I've ever wanted to do, either as an activist, now I find myself as an MLA, was to really do something to change the world. And with all my heart, Ingo, I've wanted to work for the peace, work for the goal of peace and social justice. And I found myself doing that in many different areas and in many different capacities, in the labor movement, in the women's movement, in the student movement, in the queer movement, and now as an elected official. So I've also come to an understanding of the roles that and the opportunities each of those roles give in terms of working for our goal for peace and social justice. And I don't want to understate it. I think the reason I'm here today, I hope the reason you're here and the students from Windermere and that shared right across BC is for a common goal to see peace in this world, to see the goals and principles of social justice upheld, and to see our society and our global community share those common goals. So those are my aims, Ingo, my modest goals, and I'm working for those with every ounce of energy I have and to my last breath, and I'll do that in my capacity as MLA and whatever I can do to further those goals. So I'll leave it at that.
Our American Union friends were so busy helping Barack Obama to get elected. Well, they got him elected, and now my question for Fred is, what did you get with Barack Obama?
I saw Barack Obama speak at the AFL-CIO convention. That's the closest that I have ever been to him physically. And he talked about both healthcare and about the Employee Free Choice Act there at the convention. And his speech was amazing in terms of his ability to connect with the crowd. Everything that you read or see about his charisma and, on TV is absolutely true. But it masks a certain fuzziness on some levels of content. He spoke movingly about the need for a strong public option in his healthcare program. What he did not, and what he finally ended up saying, was that he wanted everybody in the United States to have health care insurance. So he didn't say, he got a standing ovation, but I think most people didn't really notice, because of the way he presented it and how good he is at speaking, that he was saying that word insurance. He wasn't saying he wants everybody to have health care. So that was kind of telling right there. In terms of the Employee Free Choice Act, he also spoke much more briefly, actually, about the Employee Free Choice Act. But he was committed to getting it passed, but he did not say whether he was committed to having one of the key elements as far as the labor movement is concerned in the final bill, which is card check. The ability of workers to organize a union simply by signing off 50% plus one of them, instead of going through the process of an NLR, National Labor Relations Board election, which allows the employer enough time to harass and intimidate and fire lead union organizers. So where those are both at right now, We're closer maybe to that health care bill being passed, and I think we probably, at this point, looks like we might get a public option in it. It won't be as good as single payer for sure, but it may be a stepping stone towards single payer. That's what our hope is.
Okay, thanks, Fred. Actually, we had the idea to invite her because she's the NDP spokesperson for First Nations issues and used the C word talking about First Nations issues, unsettled land claims, suggesting that there might be such a thing as colonialism, this as a proper term to describe the condition of First Nations people on the soil that is called Canada today. And assuming that I'm not the only one who is fairly ignorant on that question, if you could just give us a very brief idea, kind of what are the key problems we are looking at here in terms of colonialism and the condition First Nations people are facing.
In 1763, there was something signed called the Royal Proclamation. And in the pre-Confederation period, there was a notion of nation to nation in Canada. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 outlined some of that, and there were some other things. But after Confederation, and it was leading up into Confederation, that relationship significantly changed into a relationship of domination and control and assimilation. And coming up into the 1930s, things didn't significantly change. In fact, I think it was 1929 when Duncan Campbell Scott, I probably don't have his name right, basically reiterated the government's position on assimilation and their methodology for dealing with what they called the Indian problem. And things did not significantly start to change in Canada. I'm reminding people that First Nations didn't have the right to vote until the 1960s, that women were seriously discriminated against under the Indian Act until 1985, that First Nations lost their right to status. They were called being enfranchised if they became doctors, lawyers, clergy people, that First Nations had no right to hire lawyers to settle their land claims disputes. And it wasn't actually until 1969 that First Nations across this country began to mobilize once again in a very serious, concerted way in response to Jean Chrétien's paper, the 1969 paper, that outlined Canada's continued assimilationist policy in detail. So we still today have an ongoing problem of lack of recognition around the nation-to-nation self-government status of First Nations in this country. And so I would argue we're still very much in a colonialist, patriarchal mode in this country. And although there has been some improvements since the 1930s, we're not remotely where we should be.
Jim, my question for you is actually similar to the one I had for Fred. The unions in BC supported Carol James, maybe not quite as strong as the US unions supported Barack Obama, but there was a fair push from the BC unions to elect Carol James. But unlike the American colleagues, you didn't get her. So the question then is not what do you expect from the new government, but after supporting Carol James not getting her, are BC unions trying to give up on electoral politics? Are they thinking about finding different ways to engage with the NDP, or will they turn towards the movement and rediscover the World Peace Forum Society and others?
I mean, I think we were all deeply disappointed that we lost this election by 3,500 votes and the last one by 2,500 votes because the losing is so extreme. The consequences for poor people particularly, and women and others in the society and low-wage workers is more dramatic than even for many, many unionized workers because they have some protection. So we are disappointed. I believe firmly that this isn't an either-or situation, that Mabel is an activist and an MLA, and that we have to be connected. That working class people need a political expression, whether it's the NDP or independence or whatever it is. Without the ability to participate in democracy, we cannot even protect the labor movement. That's just the bottom line. It's been that way from the very beginning, and if you look around the world, there's no question that where there's a very strong labor movement, you'll also find a very strong party representing the working class that wins elections.